So all of this seems like, collecting a lot of data. There's a like huge amount of data points which you need to collect. What was one of the most challenging things in getting something like this set up across the entirety of the campus?
That we work in higher education. I guess I shouldn't say that, right? I've never worked outside of higher education in my professional career, but one would think, and one always hears about, how higher education is, just loath to change, right? And or update, iterate, all these things. And that's really, kind of due to the nature of how higher education in America is set up, at least. I don't know if it's set up over there the same way, but our kind of shared governance structure, right? We can't do anything without everybody's approval. Um, that's not necessarily true for this project, but that kind of attitude, I think, or at least perspective, does kind of bleed into a lot of what we do as administrators. So one of the ways one of the most challenging things I think was right at the start was, like I said before, my boss kind of asked me, he said, if my boss comes to me, Tyler, and asks me how many coaching sessions did we have last week, I don't know, like that's a pretty simple question I should be able to answer. So can you take your team and go help me answer that question kind of thing. And so what we did is we started pulling all the data that we had already, right? But all of that data was being input by each different success coaching team in different ways for different reasons. So the data was not defined in a systematic way, was not defined in a standard way. So essentially what I did is I put up a longitudinal graph that showed how many coaching sessions we had week by week and said, this would be great if coaching sessions was defined the same way by everybody. Then we could actually draw some insights from this kind of thing. So I think the most challenging part was making sure that there was a common understanding that the data that we currently had was not sufficient, right? And kind of explaining, why is this not sufficient? So really kind of getting into like, this is not clean and this is not valid. What does that mean for us as leadership? What does that mean for staff? And how can we all work together to get clean and valid data? That kind of continual, I guess, reminder of why this is important to have, and like why we're asking you to change just a little bit of how you input stuff on the screen is going to have huge dividends, right? So getting the buy-in was one of the most challenging things. Um, One of the ways that we mitigated that is my boss. He's the senior AVP of strategy and innovation at UCF, and he's also the division's chief of staff. So he's a nice person to have in the room and have on your side, right? And so one of the things that we did is we essentially developed a team from Ryan, senior AVP, another AVP was in there, a senior director was in there, a couple 4 or 5 directors were in there, and kind of made this what I have termed before a kind of vertical structure of empowerment, right? If the person who can make the decision on the change is not in the meeting, then everybody in the meeting is just discussing change. They're not deciding on change, right? So what we did is we held kind of bi-weekly meetings with all of the people who could decide on changes in the room, and we decided on changes every 2 weeks until we got to a point where we were like, okay, this makes sense. We can now roll this out. And we had all the people in the room who were going to help us roll it out from day one. We had my data people in the room from day one. So when we got to the point of collecting data, I didn't have to go explain to my data analysts, hey, this is what we want to collect and why. They knew from the jump, and now they're coming to me with ideas. Oh, hey, why aren't we collecting it this way? Didn't we say that this was part of it? Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that. So kind of having all the people in the room, specifically the leadership who can make the decisions on moving everything forward, is how we kind of overcame the challenge of both buy-in and also momentum, right? Momentum. Um, and we're now, the rubber is hitting the road kind of for the first time. We have spent the last 2 months beginning to share some of the data, at least outright. We're not calling it findings yet because we don't have a full semester's worth of data. But sharing that back out with folks, specifically staff, right, at kind of large all team meetings. And I suspect that the most challenging part is yet to come, right? We kind of have, ASC level data now, which we've never had before. So um, so directors of each one of the teams can now kind of use this data to have constructive conversations with ASCs about how many students they're seeing and how many students they may not be seeing, and all these kind of high performer. Hey, what did you do last week to hold 80 sessions in 1 week? How did you set up your days? Did you have only 15 minutes? How did those go? Did you feel burnt out? Like, we're trying to figure out how we can get everybody to kind of a happy, consistent medium of um, seeing a regular amount of students every week without all these spikes, right? Sometimes, especially in higher education, it's like right when we come up to midterms, we go from 30 or 40 in a week to 90 to 100 in a week. And we'd rather pre-stage that and kind of even it out and give everybody a more consistent flow to their job. So I think that's probably going to be one of the more challenging parts is kind of digging into that data and getting it in front of everybody and having those kind of conversations.